Hi, Dave Goebel here. Today is May 7th, 2024. The topic of this video is what it's like living with someone with an unchecked mental illness. And in my case, I was married to a woman with unchecked mental illness, and then we had a child who was born with a mental health problem. Let me first talk about myself. Fortunately for me, I was born with a strong sense of sanity. I consider myself a survivor. I was able to give it all to Peg and Charlotte. But I got to the point where they were eroding my sanity. And that's all I had left. My sanity. So I left. I'm fully sane now. I'm a very analytical person, you see. I'm a true Libra. I study everything before I make a decision. The decisions I make are based on sound reasoning and solid common sense. Something people with mental illness are incapable of doing. Now let me move on to my experience of living with two females that suffer from extreme mental illness issues. I believe that both of them suffer from the same problem. Let me dive into that now. My reference material for this video comes from the online publication called recovered.org and an article written by Samir Kadri entitled Anger Disorders. It was last updated 12 January 2024 and medically reviewed by Dr. Jenny Jacobsen. I've included a link for both the article and Dr. Jacobsen's credentials, which are very impressive. I've included them here. People can read behind me where I read this information from. I began my research looking into extreme anger issues. Obviously this thing with my family is not right. Peg and Charlotte's anger issues are not normal. I've been married to Sherry for 18 years, and she has never ever displayed any anger issues like I was exposed to living with Peg and Charlotte. Even the rough patches we had when Nicholas came to live with us don't even compare to what it was like living with those two. Mr. Kadre writes the following. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM, holds that anger is a core component in 5 diagnoses: borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder, intermittent explosive disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, and disruptive mood desegregation. Disorder. I don't even know what that. I can't even pronounce that word. It's in the read. I've honed in on borderline personality disorder. It looks interesting. Let's read about that. Borderline personality disorder, BPD, is a mental health condition that causes emotional instability in sufferers. It is characterized by self-image issues, impulsive behaviors, unsustainable relationships with friends or family, and intense anger issues. It is characterized, let me review that again. It is characterized by self-image issues, impulsive behavior, unsustainable relationships with friends and or family, and intense anger issues. Let me continue on with the borderline personality is. Okay, the article goes on to say, sufferers are highly unpredictable, with moods shifting from one end of the spectrum to another suddenly. This can be problematic when it comes to surges of anger, as these do not only lead to harmful behavior towards others, but also towards themselves. People with BPD have a far higher rate of self-harm and suicidal behaviors than the general population. Yeah. In my unsolicited amateur shrink's opinion, this is what both Peg and Charlotte suffer from. Borderline personality disorder. I am sure of this. So, to support my assumption and my free evaluation, let me provide you with some examples. I have a couple examples here. I picked these examples because they are the easiest to explain and they are the most outrageous. But believe me, I have volumes full of insane things that those two did. Volumes. I can make hours worth of videos. First, let me talk about my ex-wife, Peg. With Peg, there were certain times when I could count on her losing her temper, and other times it would come out of nowhere. First example. This was common. I could never figure out why going to church alone and then going to the grocery store afterwards would send Peg into a full-blown manic attack. Absolute center nuts. This started when we lived in the city and continued the entire time we lived in Pasadena. But this one particular time, I knew when she was coming in the front door that she was in the middle of a manic attack. Never could understand that one about the church, the grocery store, and manic attack. So, I knew there was trouble coming. I could just feel it. So Charlotte and I got up to the living room and we stood there side by side, waiting for Peg to roll into the front door. So, she comes rolling into the front door, and Charlotte and I are standing there side by side, and Peg begins to scream and curse at the both of us, me, but probably me, saying crazy things. When they get into that manic episode like that, they make no sense. I know this. I've learned to just let them roll on it. So anyway, so she gets into this manic episode, and it's like they're possessed by the devil. Sounds funny, but it's not. After Peg stopped screaming, after Peg screamed herself out, she ran out the front door. I said to Charlotte, "Don't go anywhere. She'll be back." So Peg hopped in the car, drove around the block, came back in. Charlotte and I were standing there, and she picked up where she left off. Started screaming at me, Charlotte, like a lunatic. When those people are in that manic episode, when they're going on, you cannot stop them. They're just out of control. So after she was done screaming the second time, she ran out the front door, hopped in the car, and was gone for a couple hours. I slept in the basement for a week after that. Now my second example. The time Peg threatened to kill me because I hung the shelf in the wrong place in the bathroom. This one really caught me off guard. One of those characteristics of the borderline personality disorder is depression and outbursts of fits of rage. And this time, Peg hit both of them at the same time, which really shocked me. Peg wanted me to hang this shelf in the bathroom. So I said, "Okay, where do you want it?" She said, "On the back wall." I said, "Why don't you get out of bed and come over here and show me?" Peg was in bed a lot. She's probably still in bed a lot. That's the depression part of it. Peg is, I'm sure about that. She refused to get out of bed. Depression. I have many examples of that. So I went and hung the shelf in the wrong place. When she got up to look, she realized that I put it in the wrong place. This sent Peg into another full-blown manic screaming episode. She went lunatic. I mean, screaming. Once again, you don't know what they say when they're in that. And this is when it caught me off guard. She told me if there was a gun in the house, she'd kill me. And now, of course, that came in the middle of a full-blown manic episode, which means if there was a gun in the house, she could quite possibly have shot me. If anybody's ever seen these people, when they're in a full-blown manic episode, you cannot control. You can't, right? It's out of control. So I was so shocked that she said she'd kill me for hanging the shelf in the wrong place. I went back into the bedroom and I said, "You're kidding, right?" "Oh no, she made it perfectly clear to me under no circumstances she's serious." And it's a couple of choice words with that too. I just shook my head and walked away. Cleaned up my stuff. I was done with that. I slept in the basement for a week after that. And after that, every time I went to bed, I slept with one eye open. I never trusted that woman, and I certainly never bought a gun. This is the comical part about that whole thing. Peg filled out the original restraining order against me because those two work in tandem. So Peg went and filled it out because I know I saw the copy and I recognized her handwriting. And in the original restraining order, she said, "I fancy guns," insinuating that I'm a threat to Charlotte, Eliza, and everybody else because I fancy guns. Now, isn't that rich coming from the woman who threatened to kill me if I had a gun in the house? That I fancy guns? What sane man would buy a gun and put it in their house when the women are nuts? God. Talk about inviting something. Dan Bongino says, "Don't be getting dead." That's staying away from getting dead. Now for Charlotte. When Charlotte was an infant, she would burst out in these fits of rage where she'd flail her arms and kick and slam her head backwards. Just come out of nowhere. It was an infant. She couldn't talk. How the hell this terrified me, of course. So at that time, I'm dealing with Peg. Her mental health issues were really coming to life because they came to life after she had Charlotte. So I'm dealing with this, and then I'm dealing with an infant who would just go in these flailing, crazy, manic episodes before the kid could even talk. So, for example, when I would give her a bath as an infant, I would always hold my hand behind her head and wash her body, because I never knew when she would flip out and start flailing and flip her head back. And I was terrified that if she flipped her head back and cracked it, first of all, she could really do some serious damage. But most importantly, nobody would ever believe me. I'd say, "Look, the kid's nuts." And they would say, "No infant does that." I'm saying, "I'm telling you, she's nuts." And so I just was terrified. I watched her, and as soon as I could stop giving that kid a bath, I stopped. There was no way in hell. I was terrified of that situation. Did not want her slamming her head. Nobody would have believed me. Peg would have been there. "Yeah, she did something to him. He did something to her." That's not normal. Her episodes of these fits of rage increased through the years. Hers were unpredictable, whereas Peg's were very predictable and frequent, like the grocery store thing. I have to tell the story about why I took Charlotte's bedroom door off. That's an anger issue. That'll go down in the annals of global history. Okay, so I had planned to go see my sister in Cumberland. Been planned for quite a while. She had moved out there. Charlotte and I were all excited. We're looking forward to it all week and getting ready and stuff like that. So it was Friday afternoon. So Peg was, I forget why, I believe we were leaving. Peg got home. So it's mid-afternoon. So I had to get the lawn cut. So I said, "Charlotte, just sit here. Let me go over, get the lawnmower from Dad. I'll bring it back. Cut the lawn. Mom, get here, and we'll roll." And for some reason, I have no idea, she went into a manic attack and started flipping out, really flipping out, screaming. And I don't know why. And so she kept screaming. And once again, when they get into these manic attacks, they make no sense, right? You can't make any sense of what they're saying. So I kept begging her, stop, Charlotte, please stop screaming. Just let me get the lawn cut, and we'll get out. We'll move on. We'll go to Cumberland. And she wouldn't stop. And I begged her to stop. And I finally said to her, look, Charlotte, if you do not stop, I'm not taking you with me. She wouldn't stop. And I left her home. When I got home, Peg had a big steak dinner ready for me to butter me up for what had happened. I asked Charlotte why she went nuts. She told me she didn't know why. At that point, two normal, fully sane parents would look at each other and say, we got a problem. But not in that house. That was normal. Business is normal. But to me, that was completely insane. I just, life went on as always. This is the way they acted. I believe that Peg and Charlotte will never get the help they need until someone forces them to do that. They feed off each other. Their manic anger, it's just one gets it, the other defends it. Then the other gets it, then the other defends it. Then they both get together and then they go after their target. There's something wrong with these people. Okay? It was commonplace for the both of them to get into vicious verbal attacks at each other. They dragged me into it. We all get in saying nasty things to each other, bitter, vicious things I just cannot believe I even said. It was not me. It was just that was not me. That was my sanity. That was me losing my sanity. Getting in these kind of vicious arguments with those two. So they dragged me into it. The argument would get vicious, and then it would end. Those two would hop in the car, go up to the mall, get ice cream, and go to the movie. Meanwhile, I'm messed up for a week because of this, what's going on. And that's the way people handle that. Manic people handle this. They go nuts. Then they quickly make up, and everything's okay in their mind, not realizing what they've done and what they've said and everything else. They just move on. They're like, okay, lose temper, cuss out, just jump, try to kill somebody. Hey, no big deal. Move on. I've never ever been messed up like that with any fight I've had with Sherry. We've had some drag out, down, out fight. Never ever close to that. And that's how I know those two have a mental health issue. That's not normal. I will end with this. This would make a great Dr. Phil episode, wouldn't it? I'm sure he'd want to know why I, the person they threw me out of the family, is the only one who's trying to do something about this. I know I'm not the only person that has been the target of this anger and has seen this anger. There's others that have, and I know who you are, and I will call you out at some point. A family's supposed to step up and help their loved ones when they're in need, when they have mental health issues. Mental health issues are the toughest things for families to come together to address. And all of you are in denial as to what is going on up there. And I'm telling you now, stop turning your head in fear. You have to get the courage to step up and make those two get help. They need it, and it's your job. I've done everything I can, and it's your job to get them to do it. I'm here. Y'all know how to get in touch with me. Ain't no problem. I'm here to help. Ciao.